Glad you can make it today, and we're going to take a walk through giving stats in Donorfy and what they mean and how you might use them as well. So let's click on through the presentation, and we're going to dive into the application into Donorfy from time to time as well on the different tabs that I have open on my browser. So let's just start with what we're going to cover, what they are and why we developed in the first place, how they're calculated, so straight in at the deep end as to how we actually work out what numbers to put on the screen, the impact that then has on lists and dashboards, and then some thoughts about how they might be useful. I'd be really interested also to hear your thoughts about how they might be useful in the future. So first of all, where are these giving stats and how do we work them out? So you find them on the constituent page, and at the top right, you're shown a summary, and there's an arrow which you can then use to expand to see a whole load more giving stats. I'll just dive across onto another tab now where I'm looking at, in my demo database here, a constituent called Andrew Pritchard, and we can see the kind of summarized view, the unexpanded view of his giving stats at the top right. But if you click the down arrow button, it will reveal some more giving stats about him, which can all be used to help you, inform your approach to him, what you talk to him about, and give you some sort of intelligence really in your database about how much people are giving and when they're giving it. So I'm going to talk you through how those numbers are derived, but you can see, broadly speaking, you have some summary figures at the top right, so the ones with a black title and an orange number. And then underneath, you have this annual analysis of their giving year by year. One of the key things to work out or to understand with Donorfy's giving stats is that when we're talking about any particular time period, like a year, that's based on the accounting date of your transaction. So the donation, as it's entered and it's on the timeline of the constituent, is a thing called an accounting date, and it's that date that places it in a year, 1 year or another year, depending upon where your year boundaries are. And of course, that date doesn't need to be entered every time. It's the date paid by default, but you can override that if you want to recognize that income in a different period. Secondly, the giving stats are largely geared, as the title suggests, around giving income. So as a charity, as a non-profit, a fundraising organization, a large proportion, the largest proportion, I guess, of your income is going to be voluntary income, money raised, money given, therefore it's gifts. However, some income is not gift income. It's for things like registering for an event or selling merchandise or a raffle ticket or something like that. So we do record that in Donorfy, but the giving stats are not about that. The giving stats are about giving income, because that's the kind of information that's going to be interesting to you in helping you develop your fundraising strategy and eventually raising more support for your organization. So in a transaction, this is a transaction, so the donor paid £99. And as you may well know, with Donorfy, you can split the use of that £99 or whatever they paid into any number of what we call allocations. Now, those allocations have about them something called a product, a fund, and a department. But the product is the important part here, because it's the product that will determine whether the gift is, whether the money for that part of the payment is a gift or not a gift. So we've got this particular element of this £99, £9 we can see to the right of that red box is a donation, whereas the other £90 on our £99 payment is an event registration fee. So Donorfy is only going to be considering the donation as part of the giving stats, not the registration fee. How do you see the accounting date? Well, the accounting date is in this little drop down, the sort of more area. I won't click it down because it's just a slide, not an actual piece of Donorfy I'm looking at here, just a screenshot. But if I clicked it down in the application, you would see an accounting date field appear, which is the same as the date paid in the top half, but it could be modified if you want to move that money into a different accounting period for analysis purposes. Okay, so back to gifts and non-gifts. How do we designate that certain kinds of income are gifts and certain parts aren't? Well, that comes down to the product. So in your settings for Donorfy, you have a place where you can set up all of your products, if you like, your income streams. You're going to have things in there like donation, grants, maybe membership subscriptions if you have a membership product in your organization. Any kind of gifts that you like can be in there, but the important thing is that you mark it down at the bottom here with gift income in giving stats set to yes. Now, we rolled this feature out, these new giving stats, over the bank holiday weekend, and by default, everyone's products are set to yes. So your products in your Donorfy are set to yes gift income. So what you need to do to avoid overstating your gift income is go and find the products that are not gift income and set them to no. Okay, and then your giving stats will be accurate in that they're giving, not other forms of income. Another thing just to make you aware of is this doesn't affect the gift aid ability of any income. It's independent. You still have, if you can see to the right, potentially gift aidable. Yes, this happens to be a gift aidable income stream and it's considered gift income. But you could conceivably have, and I can't think of too many reasons why you might, but you could conceivably have one set to yes and one set to no. So they're not linked. So just be aware of that. It's not going to take people out of gift aid if you don't say it's gift income. Okay, I'm not going to read through this slide, you'll be pleased to hear, but it's just a summary of what I'm going to show you on the top right of the screen. So these are your summary fields. There's a few more which are available in lists that aren't shown on this screen. And again, if I close them up, you'll just see the sort of highlights. Drop the list down, you'll see everything you need to see. These are all based on the criteria I mentioned earlier. So it has to be money from gift products. And a couple worthy of mention that maybe don't get the attention they deserve sometimes, but this current consecutive giving and best consecutive giving relates to the number of consecutive years that people have made gifts, used sometimes in an understanding, how long serving a donor is, how their sustained giving has carried on over the years. So currently this person has been giving for 2 years, and that happens to be their best run of consecutive giving as well. Everything else you see up there is probably self-explanatory. And then we have the annual giving at the bottom there. So let's just move on to the next slide. First of all, annual giving now respects your financial reporting year. So your financial reporting year is something you can set in your Donorfy settings, which I'll just click onto the next tab and we'll go back into Donorfy, go into settings, go into account, and go into Donorfy settings on the right, and we have reporting year starts on 1st of April in this case. So my reporting year is 1st of April to 31st of March every year. That means when Donorfy presents the giving stats, if we go back to our constituent, when Donorfy presents the annual giving stats, it breaks the years down according to your financial reporting years. Okay. If you wanted, for whatever reason, to revert to say, okay, I want to know this by calendar year, then yes, you could go back into your settings, make it 1st of January, and overnight, those stats will recalculate, and these headings will change to 1st of the 1st, 21, and 1st of the 1st, 2020. And the numbers inside, under those columns will be different because the gifts will then be falling into different years, perhaps, as a result of that. So it's very flexible in the way that you can report, and it will respect your financial years. And as you can see, we have the 4 columns. We have lifetime, which, as you can imagine, is the sum of all their giving. And then we have -1, -2, and so on. In fact, I do believe I have a slide to show that. There we go. We have the current year, and then the -1, 2, 3, and 4 plus. So -4 plus means anyone who's given, in this case, before the 1st of April 2018. So that will mop up anything older than that into that column. But they're all added up so that they are then totaled into the lifetime column, which is the leftmost column that you see on the screen there. So yes, you can change your reporting year, but remember, it refreshes overnight, not instantly. Just hopping back for a moment, back to products. If you change a product from is gift income to not gift income, or vice versa, by switching it and saving that change, it will actually recalculate the giving stats immediately for you. It just takes a few minutes to do that in the background, but you'll find that if you take one particular product out of giving stats, for example, the numbers will have changed on constituent records within a few minutes of you doing that. So you don't need to wait overnight for everything. There is one subtle difference to the -1 year. So let's just go to the current year for a moment, the one headed 1st of April and after. That's everything in this current reporting, financial reporting year. Obviously, at this stage, here today on the 5th of May, we're only partway through that year. So sometimes it's interesting to compare the -1 year at the same point last year, rather than the full year. So the eagle-eyed amongst you may have spotted a little drop-down arrow to the right of that second year heading. And that drop-down arrow there will essentially open up the ability for you to choose whether it displays the full -1 year, so the whole 365-day period, or just that year to this date. And if you do that, it means that you're looking at comparing like with like, as it were, when you're looking at this year versus last year. Okay, you'll also have spotted that back on our constituent here, you have in this annual giving summary, you have a number of rows. Each row represents an element of their total contribution. The first row, given, is easy. That is what they have given. So it basically means how much they've given, how much this constituent has given, and it shows on their timeline. Okay, so that's the total amount that has been given for those things. The next one down is gift aid reclaimed. So hopefully that's self-explanatory, but anytime that Donorfy has done the gift aid reclaim, that will update in that constituent's giving stats. Integrated gift aid isn't included in there. So that's something we may add at some stage, but just giving gift aid, for example, is not included in that number. The next line down is pledged. If you are a pro user, Donorfy professional user, you're using the opportunities feature, you'll know that there's a pledges feature in there, which enables you to record pledged income before it's received. You may want to consider that as part of the total contribution because it's coming, but it hasn't come yet. So that's what pledged means. But only the open pledges, not the ones that have been paid, because they'll be in given and you wouldn't want to double count them. Soft credits, these are gifts from other constituents which have been soft credited to this constituent. Okay, so this covers all of your things like major donors, where you've got, for example, someone has recommended to somebody else, they give some money, and this constituent, being the recommender, not the actual donor, gets some credit for it. It might not be the full amount, you might give them 50% credit or a fixed number of credit. But in Donorfy's soft credits feature, which is a feature that's been there for many years, is something which will now get recorded as part of their contribution, because even though it's money they didn't give, it's money that they're kind of responsible, partly responsible for having obtained for the charity. This also covers your peer-to-peer giving, your Just Giving, your Facebook Donate, your Virgin Money giving. So when a donor gives to a fundraising page in Just Giving, that's soft credited to the page holder. So let's imagine this person was the page holder. Any soft credits in here may be because his friends and family have given money, but we're counting it as his contribution. And therefore it adds up into the total number at the bottom, which is a sum of everything above. Okay, so what we've not had in Donorfy before is this total contribution concept, and you can query and report on that now, not just on the amount they've given. And you don't have to kind of then stitch together by scrambling around to find the gift aid and the other elements. It's all presented for you here on the one screen. Nestling under all of that is non-gift income. So we haven't forgotten about non-gift income like event fees and raffle tickets and so on. We're just listing it under those years for the sake of completeness, but it's not shown as giving income on this table. Okay. Okay, the dashboard now has some changes to show you on there, and most notably among the donor in the donor pyramid. What you may or may not realize is that the donor period and the star rating are based on the same thing. So your donor pyramid is a overview of all donors and how many you have in each total contribution. So this is using contribution, not gifts. So this is a change from previous use of Donorfy, where this was just based upon the direct gifts we'd received from this from donors, but now it's contribution value. So we have number of donors at each level, but at a specific donor perspective, you can see a star rating, which basically reflects which of those 5 bands this person is in. So at the top of the constituent screen here, we see that this person's a 5-star donor because he has met the criteria for being in that band. You can set the criteria for that banding. So in your settings, you can go to settings, configuration, find your pyramid values, and you're presented with this screen. This screen gives you, and you've been able to do this for a few months now, this screen gives you your monetary bands. So what bands A to E mean, and then the period, the time frame over which that is being looked at. So in the way it's currently highlighted, we're only looking at current year values, but actually it might be most useful to go 3-year values or even lifetime values in order to position the right people in the right elements of the pyramid. And I would suggest that actually something like 3 years or lifetime is a best practice or a good practice for evaluating your donor levels rather than just on current year. So encourage you to go in and play with that. If you do change it, it will update. I think it updates immediately. If not, everything updates overnight anyway, but I think this particular one does update immediately. And yeah, just bear in mind it's using now the contribution value, not just the gifts value. Okay, I'm going to move on. So having all this new data at our fingertips is very useful. Obviously, we can see at a constituent level what all this looks like, and you can either have that sort of always permanently rolled down so you can see everything, or you can have it summarized and then open it up and close it up as you wish. But that's at a constituent level. How do you make use of this data across your database? How do you query on this data and make it useful to you? So what we have done is we have made all those fields now available in lists. Anyone who has used lists and has tried to select the right columns to display on a list result knows that finding all the right columns in that great big page of column names was a bit of a challenge. And of course, adding a whole new wealth of loads more fields about giving stats was only going to make that worse. So at the same time as introducing giving stats, we have categorized all the fields in your lists so that you can look at the categories, drill down into them, choose the ones you want to appear in your list. And you'll see that you've got categories about the constituent. So that's going to be stuff like constituent type, first name, last name, that kind of thing. Then you've got contact details for all of the three places and the preferred ones. And then you've got your giving stats. So for each of these, you've got all of the fields available for each year and those summary lifetime ones as well. You also have something called rolling, which I'll come on to in a moment. I'll come on to now. It's my next page. So rolling stats are a variation on a theme. Let me just go back to Andrew Pritchard. We can see here that we've got his annual stats presented as financial reporting year stats. So it means that this current year is only, we're only a month and a bit into this year, speaking here today on the 5th of May. So that's not a complete year. These are complete years. So the second one, third one, fourth one, unless we choose the year to date on here, but they're complete years. But sometimes in fundraising, you want some kind of rolling mechanism where you want to say, I want to understand both at a constituent and maybe at a macro level, how much we've had in the last complete 12-month period. And that's fine today. So here we are on the 5th of May today. The last complete 12-month period is the 12 months up until the 30th of April. So that's a complete 12-month period. But as we get through May and into June, that will shift up a month. So our whole year, our whole 12-month period then goes from, up until the end of April. End of May, sorry, if we do it in June. I'll fall back on my slide here because I've thought it all through. So there we go, months 1 to 12, the 12-month period ending 30th of April, 13 to 24, etc. And we calculate those fields and make them available to you in lists for the 5-year period. So if I go into Donorfy now, and let's go into lists, just open up a new tab. I'm going to create a new list, which is a new constituent list. Rolling comparison, we'll call it. And in the results, we're going to say, let's just take out the title, give ourselves some space, and we'll put in the rolling 1 to 12 gifts amount. So that's the amount given according to all those rules about product being a gift product. And we'll also say months 13 to 24, and we'll also say months 25 to 36, and we could go back many years. So we can now see, not in financial reporting years, but in 12-month chunks, how much various individuals have given. And of course, if you exported this or produced a report, you could show a total. This is really handy for segmenting and doing recency, frequency, value segmentation, which is something that you might get involved in if you're running larger appeals, so that you can send the right ask to the right people based upon the recency, the frequency, and the value of their gifts. So that's quite a powerful tool, but it is different. We're talking about 12-month periods here, but it's not the same as financial year reporting. That's why they're in their own separate lists category. So I hope that makes sense, but it might make more sense when you play around with it as well. And remember, you can't do any harm by playing around with the lists and seeing what comes out. One little byproduct of all of this, two little byproducts of all of this, is that you now get, it doesn't show on this list because we don't have enough columns, but you now get a scroll bar, which scrolls left to right. So if you're putting lots of columns in your result display here, then that will allow you to do that still without squishing them up into unreadable formats. So you get a scroll bar there, But another one is that you also get these giving stats in the context of a campaign. Now remember, we've been looking at giving stats in the context of constituents, but imagine if we had the same array of numbers available to a campaign. Is it interesting to understand, say for your general campaign, how much it raised this financial year versus last financial year to date versus the one before, something like that? Probably is. So if I go to what I prepared earlier on here, this is a campaign performance list, I've called it. So not a constituent list. So when I did add list, I chose campaign instead. And it's offering me now the same array of fields. So the stats for the current and the minus years, again, according to reporting year and the lifetime, but it's showing them from a campaign perspective. So quite a handy way to monitor campaign performance. Of course, there are, within the campaigns page in Donorfy, there's an analytics page where you've got other stats to consider as well, like ROI. But this is quite a nice way to bring all of those numbers that we talked about earlier into campaign reporting. Lastly, dashboards have numerous tiles, as you are well aware. And if I go to my dashboard's a bit polluted with one or two custom ones that I've added there and played around with, but we've subtly changed the titles of the tiles to reflect that they are now working on gift income. You can still do all income if you want with your dashboards, but you have the clarity now, if you like, that this is reporting gift income rather than all income. So just maybe take a moment to go through that to see how your dashboard looks now, and if you want to introduce different elements because it's wrecked the way that you report or something, then you can do that with your dashboard maker or your tile maker in settings. It's always been there. So let's look at, we've looked at donor pyramid as well, so that's the other dashboard change just to mention. So how could you use your new giving stats? And I've just got a couple of examples here to maybe start the creative juices flowing a little bit, and maybe get some thoughts from you as well as to how you might use them. But I'm going to show you a couple of lists I have prepared to give an example. So you may or may not be familiar with the fundraising acronym. LIBUNT stands for last year, but unfortunately not this. So it's basically people who gave last year, but unfortunately have not as yet given this year. What does that do for you? Well, it obviously gives you a good list for you then to do some sort of reactivation mailing or some sort of campaign to get out to them and to encourage them to remember to give their annual gift. And the query now is made very simple because you can do things like this filter, which is current year -1 gifts amount greater than 0. So last financial year, we had something out of them greater than 0, but this financial year, so far it's 0. Okay, and this is our result set. We can then take it from there, send it to MailChimp, download it, print a report, whatever you'd like to do with those people. And we've put on here, just for information, the fact that each of these people by definition are in that category, but they have previously made lifetime gift values or whatever. So you might prioritize your approaches based upon their previous giving history if you want to. So that's the LIBUNT report. It won't appear in your Donorfy, by the way. It's not there today if you look at it, but as you see, if you just go to add constituent list, it's very simple to add. Just use that filter and you'll get what I've looked at there. On a very similar theme, an extension of that idea is the SciBunt. So some year, but unfortunately not this. So the filter here is people who've given 0 in the current year so far, but their lifetime gift amount is greater than 0. So they've given before, and we could find out if we want to do a year-by-year comparison, but we know they've given before, but they haven't yet given this year. So that's another audience for a slightly different approach. My next sample list, my last sample list really, is this one here, which is comparing last year versus this year to date. So this is bringing into play the idea that we're interested in last year's gifts, but only up until this day last year, compared to this year's gifts, which by definition is up to today. We're not counting gifts we haven't received yet. All right, so that's the list, and obviously it's one you can then use to browse through, export, do what you like with as well. But it's enabling now some more interesting reports. Now you could, if you want, create auto tags of all this stuff as usual. So as you know, lists, if you're a Donorfy professional user, lists are the driver for auto tags. So it's quite simple if you wanted to tag people when they've reached a certain level in a certain year, a certain kind of threshold. Maybe you have the notion of, gold, silver, bronze donors, that kind of thing. It's very easy now to query on that, therefore create tags on that. And of course, triggers. So it might be that you want to trigger support a journey email sequence or something like that from Donorfy when someone reaches a certain level. So lists are at the heart of many things that make Donorfy work nicely, and now lists are a lot more powerful because you have all these giving stats available to you within them. So that's what I got to show you. Hopefully all that made sense